Hi and welcome to my Abrsm Grade 1 oral test video. Today we're going to go through the different tests and I'm going to explain them to you because I appreciate sometimes you don't always have the time for your teacher to go through this with you in lessons. So I'm going to explain what they're going to be asking of you, what they'll do, and the best way to respond to these tests. Stay to the end. This is the important one for those of you preparing for Grade 1 because there's a secret that I need to tell you at the very end of this video. When doing oral tests, the examiner has a set script of words that they have to say. So I'm going to use those when it comes to giving you examples and practice tests as well. But the very first part, section A of Grade 1, is being able to clap the pulse of a piece played by the examiner and to be able to identify whether it's got 2 or 3 beats in a bar. This is referring to the time signature. We know the numbers that we get at the beginning of the piece. It might be 2/4, 3/4, and there's all sorts of different ones that we may have learned up until this point. All we're trying to identify is we're not trying to get complicated and say 2/4, 3/4. We're just saying whether it's got 2 beats in a bar or 3 beats in a bar. And the way to do this is by listening for where they play the loudest beat. Now, particularly in these earlier grades, the examiner is trained to help you as much as possible. So what you're listening for is the strong beat and how frequent that strong beat occurs. So for example, if it's in 2 beats in a bar, you're basically effectively going to hear something that's going to sound a bit like a march, where you get a loud, strong beat followed by a soft beat, and then you're back to the strong beat again. So it might sound something like this. So you can hear a very clear, strong, weak, in which case the answer to that would be 2. If it was 3, you've guessed it, you're going to have a strong beat followed by 2 softer beats. So this is going to sound very similar to a waltz, perhaps. Now, they will play the test for a few seconds, and particularly in the earlier grades, if they sense that you've not quite worked it out yet, they will extend it and make it a little bit longer to try and give you a helping hand. But you've got to figure out whether it's in 2 or 3 beats in a bar, and as soon as you've done that, you've got to then clap along with the examiner playing, but you also have to replicate, copy where they are doing the strong beats and the weak beats. So for example, if it was 2 beats in a bar, you would clap at the same speed, same tempo as the examiner. So you can hear a very clear, strong, weak clap in your response. Or if it's in 3, obviously like the examiner was playing, if that's what you hear, is the strong, weak. I advise you make it as clear as possible so it's really obvious where you're intending that strong beat to be, so that they can tell that you know what you're doing. This is why they ask you to clap along. The main reason, when there's multiple reasons for it, but the main reason is because the options are basically this is in 2 or 3. Clapping along, showing you know where the strong beat and the first beat of the bar is, shows that you didn't guess. So it's backing up your answer, because obviously with it only being 2 or 3, the answer, it's a 50-50 chance of getting it right, isn't it? Of course, if you listen to the test and you've no idea whether it's in 2 or 3, you can ask the examiner if they would play it again. Okay? And then if you still don't know at that point, then obviously you take your shot and guess 50-50. One thing that's important to remember when you're watching through this video, and particularly when you're doing the tests, remember when you sit the exam, the examiner will ask you to turn around so that you can't see the keys. So particularly when it comes to listening for a change in a piece of music, or just being able to see what notes they're playing for singing back, things like that, you're not allowed to look, so they will ask you to turn around. So I do suggest that when you're doing the test parts of this video that you don't watch the video. It means you don't have to look at me for as long as the video is worth anyway, so everyone's a winner. Okay, so here are some examples of the pulse clapping test. So they will say exactly these words that I'm about to say. Obviously I can't hear what you're doing, but I'm going to play 2 or 3 extracts for you to decide whether it's got 2 beats in a bar or 3 beats in a bar. As soon as you've figured out whether it's 2 or 3 beats in a bar, try clapping along, remembering to stress that strong beat, depending on whether it's in 2 or 3. And then I'll tell you what the answer is at the end. So first clap in time while I play, join in as soon as you can and give a louder clap on the strong beats. Hopefully you figured out that that was in 3 beats in a bar, because you could hear a very clear strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak. So like I said earlier, you're listening for the frequency of that strong beat. Have a listen to this one. Did you get it? That one is in 2 beats in a bar. Let's just try one more before we move on to the next test. That was a little bit trickier, that one, wasn't it? Because there weren't regular crotchet beats going throughout the piece to kind of help you gauge how often that strong beat was. Hopefully you got the answer to be 3. Okay, moving on. So test B is the one that pretty much everybody hates unless they're a singer and they're taking a singing exam. And yeah, this is the one where you've got to sing back what the examiner plays. So it is basically, they're asking you to sing back 3 very, very short phrases of music that they play and you immediately copy. So for example, they would go la 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 la, and then they would play another and you sing it back. Now, I know my voice sounded a bit strange there. What you've got to remember about this test, and it's really important to remember this, they are not judging or marking you on the quality of your singing voice or your singing technique or anything like that. So you can sing to ah, la, pretty much anything that you want, as long as it's audible. What they're listening for is whether you can copy, whether you can replicate the correct pitch. This is whether the notes are higher or lower, and the rhythm, the different lengths of the notes as well. That's basically what they're testing at this point. They go through a little bit of a rigmarole when they do these tests. They give you what we call a key chord, and that means whatever key the piece is in. So for example, if we were playing a C major scale and it had no sharps or flats, we'd say that that was in the key of C. So if you're playing the piano, for example, or most instruments probably are doing the C major scale in this grade. If not, the C major arpeggio, which is another pattern of scale that hopefully you're practicing, is made up of the notes C, E, G. And that is what they're referring to when they play you the key chord. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't give you an awful lot of help. It's just getting the sound of the key in your head before you start. So they'll give you the key chord and they'll also give you the starting note. That's more important. That's a good one to listen to. And then they'll count 2 bars in so that you get the sense of the speed. Now they are also trained to ensure that on the last beat that they count in, their inflection or the pitch of their voice goes up to make it as obvious as possible that they're about to start. So for example, if I was about to count you in for a test, I would have to go 1, 2, 1, 2 to make it as obvious as possible that I'm about to play. So let's give a couple of tests a try. So this is what the examiner will say. Next, I'd like you to sing 3 phrases as echoes. Here is the key chord and your starting note. 1, 2, 1, 2. Nice, well done. Now obviously I can't hear you, and this is just for practice purposes, but the more you do, the easier it is for you to associate what you're hearing to be able to kind of replicate in your voice. So the more you do, the better. Good. You might find, now this is particularly not just down to this group, but particularly teenage boys whose voices change quite considerably during those years. Sometimes you end up with a limited range. You can only sing a few notes, and sometimes that range might be much lower. So say for example, if they play you the test that I just played you, and as a boy you can't sing that at the same pitch, the same note that they've played you at, da 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 da. You can just what we call transpose, so put it into a different area of the piano at a lower pitch. Dum ba da dum bum, which might be helpful to you. If you still find that that's really tricky, you can ask the examiner after he's played the first little test, or maybe you've attempted the first one and realise, oh no, that's completely out of my range. You are allowed to say to the examiner, please could you possibly play me something a little bit lower or a little bit higher. Okay, so it is worth knowing that that is something that you can do. Let's just do a couple more of these tests. So next I'd like you to sing 3 phrases as echoes. Here is the key chord and your starting note. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Well done. Because the tests that they have been given are not these tests, unfortunately. They're going to be a completely different set of tests that aren't published, that you won't have ever heard before. Otherwise, I guess that's kind of cheating. Are all in the same kind of vocal range, which is why I say it's very important to make sure you say something if you think that's way too high or that's way too low for me. Okay, let's just do one more. Here's the key chord and your starting note. 1, 2, 1, 2. Well done. Now, moving on to test C. This is where the examiner is going to play you 2 very short phrases, and there's going to be a change to one of the notes the second time round. Okay, so it's going to be pretty much exactly the same tune the second time round, but there's just going to be one note changed, and it's going to be changed in pitch. So one of the notes that you hear is going to be higher or lower than the first time that it was played. So you've got to listen very carefully to that first one. Again, this is another one of those situations where if you're not sure, you can say, please could you play me them both again? You really don't get penalised very much at all for asking to hear them again. Bearing in mind that the oral test is only out of 18 marks, there's 4 sections, so you can do the maths and split that up between the 4. It's not necessarily equally split, but we're talking about 1 mark taken off every time that you request to hear them again. So let's just get straight into it, because I think this is an easy one to explain. So they'll say the following. Now I'll play a phrase twice, but with a change to one of the notes the second time. Tell me whether the change was near the beginning or near the end. So again, they do a similar thing. They go through a rigmarole of saying, here's the key chord, we've spoken about that. And they also play you the tonic, which is basically just the first note of the scale. So if we're in C major, they would play you the arpeggio in effect as a chord of C major. And they'd also play you the tonic, which is the first note of that scale, which would be, that's it, C. And again, they would count 2 bars in before they play the first melody. Okay, so here we go. Here is the key chord and the tonic. 1, 2, 1, 2. Now here it is with the change. Did you hear where it changed? Was it the beginning or was it the end? It was the end. Well done. Okay, let's try another one of those. So here is the key chord and the tonic. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Here it is with the change. Did you hear it? It was at the beginning. And finally, we've got test D. This is where they play you a short piece of music and they'll ask you some questions at the end. So you've just got to know what you're listening out for. Okay. Thankfully, in the words that they say before you start, they will say, listen to this piece, and I'll ask you about loud or quiet playing and smooth or detached notes. So the smooth or detached notes is fairly obvious, but with the loud and soft playing, they might ask you if one half of the piece is loud or soft, but they might also ask you if there was a change in the volume of dynamic, whether it was gradual or sudden. And we know, don't we, hopefully, that gradual changes of dynamic are crescendos, and then the gradual getting softer of dynamic is diminuendos. And that's it. It's that simple. So let's just give this one a go, shall we? So listen to this piece and I'll ask you about loud or quiet playing and about smooth or detached notes. Where was the quietest part of the piece? The quietest part was in the middle. Was the change from quiet in the middle to loud at the end made suddenly or gradually? It was made gradually. Had it have been made suddenly, it would have sounded more like this. Okay, hopefully a bit more obvious that it wasn't just crescendoing through that line. At the beginning, were the notes smooth or detached? Can you remember? They were detached. Okay, and then that would be the end of the test. Let's just do a couple more of these, and then I've not forgotten, I've got the secret to tell you. So here we go, listen to this piece, then I'll ask you about loud or quiet playing and about smooth or detached notes. Where was the loudest part of the music? The loudest part was in the middle. Towards the end, did the music become quiet suddenly or gradually? That was a tricky one, actually. It got quieter gradually, but it was over quite a short space of time. It had kind of gone. So it's harder to tell, but had it happened suddenly, it'd have been about as obvious as they could possibly do it. This is a particularly loud piano as well, so even harder to make the changes between the two, but great. And that's the end of grade 1. What you've got to bear in mind is I appreciate you've watched a relatively long video because I've been explaining things to you. And hopefully that will save some time in your lessons that your teacher can focus on other things like your scales and your sight reading and your pieces as well. I think it's time for the secret now. What do you think? So, here it is. And this is very, very important. So don't go telling everybody, unless they've subscribed, obviously. So basically, we know that the oral test is out of 18, right? I know that if you at least attempt each of the 4 sections, even if you do them all completely wrong, they have to give you 8 out of 18 for attempting the tests. So it's not what you think. We probably thought that if you got everything wrong, you'd get 0 out of 18. Not true. So you're starting at 8 out of 18 before you've even given any correct answers. So everything correct you do or sing back after that is just building up towards that 18 mark. And unless you've got perfect pitch, which is basically where you can say what a note is, or you could sing a note on request without needing any guidance from an instrument. If somebody just said to me, sing an A, and I went, boo, that means you've got perfect pitch. So the important thing is to remember, even if you hate singing, even if you don't know what the answer is, 2 of them are 50-50. Singing, even if you just go la 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 la, that contributes to the 8 out of 18. It's incredible. And then at the end, again, was it quiet or loud? No idea. Quiet. Or if the piece in general sounded loud, go with loud. That's quite a safe bet to go with. But give them a go, because they have to give you that 8 out of 18, and that's really well worth knowing. That 8 out of 18 could tip your overall mark from a pass to a merit, or a merit to a distinction. Thanks for watching my video on the Abrsm oral test. I hope you found it useful. Do check out some of my other videos. I never know how you do this. I've done videos about sight reading. I've also recorded all of the pieces from the grades 1 to 5 Abrsm piano books, and we'll do the next syllabus when that comes out shortly in June 2026. Why I started playing the piano, how I got into playing the organ, all sorts of stuff in there. There's even one of my old piano lessons where my very strict piano teacher told me off for wearing the wrong jumper. Anyway, see you later. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you haven't liked or left a comment on how you got on with this video and with the grade 1 tests, drop us a comment below and let me know how you got on. See you later.